Hello and welcome to the CX Files for June 26, 2025. My name is Mark Hillary and I'm in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
And I'm Peter Ryan in Montreal. Mark, good to catch up with you, and really good to catch up on what I think is going to be a fantastic podcast this week. Why don't you tell us who we've got teed up?
Yeah, we've got Pete Jones, who's the chief executive and founder of Grypp. Now, Grypp is a company that we had on the podcast about 2 years ago when this idea of visual CX seemed very, very new. We were sort of exploring what they were talking about and what they were offering. And I got Pete on to do a sort of update on what's changed and what's really taking place in this whole idea or this environment of visual CX. Because I think that quite often when we talk about video support, we often just think of an agent being on a video screen, a bit like a Zoom call. I can see the agent can see me. But just listening to Pete talk about it, you get the idea that there's a hell of a lot going on that is possible once you make the kind of CX experience visual, even just down to like very basic things like when you're doing support calls because your washing machine is broken or something. They can immediately see what the problem is because they can just say, well, show me the problem. And so it really sort of moves the dial on being able to just reduce the amount of words you need to use. So you don't need to sort of explain what's wrong. You can just show it.
I've been a big proponent of more visual aspects in the CX space for quite some time. I'll never forget when we were in the heady days of Skype and everybody had Skype set up on their computers. And there was talk about, wouldn't it be wonderful if you could use Skype to show somebody about how you've got a problem with your plumbing, with your faucet, or as you say, a washing machine, a major appliance, your car. And the first time I actually saw this was at a contact center in the Dominican Republic, where there was some type of a plumbing manufacturing firm that was being supported out of this facility. And agents actually did have the video capability. It's come a long way since then. Now, our research, Mark, is estimating that about 1 in 5 enterprises is deploying some aspect of visual CX, whether it's, I don't know, a video chat or a video kiosk. But the fact of the matter is, this is a niche angle, but it's very much a value add angle. And there's a lot of firms that this is very applicable for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's like the conversation we had last week about the myth busting, especially with regards AI. But this is what we see with almost every technology that comes into the CX environment. And yet we can see with the visual angle that it's been something that we could have done for a long, long time. Skype was just recently retired, and I guess it had a sort of 20 years or so of being the predominant visual calling technology until Zoom and Teams took over. But this idea of visual interactivity has been there a long time. So it is a surprise that so much of the contact center CX that we see is kind of designed entirely without being able to see anything.
It is, and I do think that this is a trend that's going to become probably going to get some steam over the course of the coming years. More and more people are just used to interacting on video platforms. It's become commonplace. I can recall in the heady days of the pandemic, there was a lot of fatigue and a lot of pushback against video calling. And I'd say to a very large degree, the telephone has made a comeback. But when it comes right down to it, Mark, if you've got a specific need and it can be better satisfied from a CX standpoint by showing an agent an image or a live video capture, people are going to be looking for this. And it's up to the enterprise community to work with organizations like the Gripps of the world to be able to actually achieve this.
Yeah, and there's a great example that leads on from that as well. That I'll let Pete describe it in more detail in the actual interview, but it's just this idea that the agent can see what the customer is seeing, because there was a company they worked with where they were getting a lot of complaints, people calling in and saying, you delivered my product and it was damaged. And then when they switched on the visual system, the first time the agent said, well, show me the damage, then the caller just hung up. And so it's you can see that there's also the opportunity here for a lot of fraud prevention as well.
Well, I'd recommend that we head on over to your interview with Pete so we can find out a little bit more about visual CX and where this is going into the rest of 2025 and beyond.
Hi, Pete. It's great to get you back. It's been a couple of years now since Grypp was featured here on the podcast. So, could you give the listeners, well, just to state, is your first time because it was Diane who was heading sales before, wasn't she? And so she was on 2 years ago. So, your first visit. What have you been up to in the last couple of years since Grypp last featured then?
Gosh, yes, it's been a quite an exhausting couple of years. We've been doing some amazing things out in the field. I think one of the things, just to recap for the listeners, you're right. It was Diane a couple of years ago who was kind enough to give a showing and be on your amazing podcast. And thanks for having me on. We've basically, Grypp's fundamentally, we're here to bring sight to call centers, to level the playing fields for agents so they can see what the customer sees and vice versa. And I think, that real-time interaction has just kept us busy since inception. And the last couple of years have been no different to that. We've got lots of new faces on the team. We've expanded partners and customers. Product changes have been phenomenal. Lots of new releases. I think we've been averaging 3 or 4 fairly large developments and innovations a quarter consistently. And that's given us 20, 30 new innovations across the product, getting data insights like we've never had before so that we can see new patterns and ways of informing centers of how to run just by bringing this whole new visual capability to bear in an effective way. So, yeah, frenetic couple of years, and I think it's only going to get more so as more and more people are waking up to the idea of, opening your eyes is perhaps a good thing.
Yeah. And I mean, that visual element was why we were talking about getting you back on the podcast. And I think I summarized, I was going to use, we need humans in CX. So why are we restraining them as a sort of title of this conversation? Do you think that we are really restraining the agents in contact centers then? If they can't see what the customer is seeing, is that now a sort of something that's fundamentally holding back those agents?
Listen, there's lots of ways. Of course, for me, the answer is an obvious yes. It's a screaming yes. But I think, let's try and frame it in a different way. If you take your call center hat off for a minute, and let's suppose you're here with me in my home, and I've got a problem with something that you can help with. Say my washing machine's showing an error code, or I've got a blinking light on the router, or maybe the car media system, I can't get it to do what I want, but you can, right? You're right there with me. How are you going to help me fix it? What are you going to do?
Well, yeah, I'm probably going to say, show me the problem.
Well, you'd think, right? What you're unlikely to do is try and help me with your eyes shut. I mean, that wouldn't make a lot of sense, right? You stood right there with me and you're going to close your eyes and you're going to guide me through how to fix something. And kind of that was my introduction to the call center. We're not, originally from the call center. We've been doing a lot of work in visualization techniques and integrating visual technology into sales and service journeys. So when I came across the industry, it was like phenomenal to me. It's like, okay, so let me get this right. So you're recruiting people to join Shiny Brand X company, and it's an award-winning team of professional customer service agents, and your job is to guide customers through fixing problems that they can see with your eyes shut. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense in today's world. So we saw it as a massive opportunity to really transform it, to fix the model, and to level the playing field. I talk about, bringing agents and customers closer together than they've ever been. And that's really the whole idea is to be able to serve people like you're stood right next to them. And in any scenario where you can imagine, could I do this better if I was stood next to the person? Then that's when you should have your eyes open. That's when you should have visual capabilities, because people are spending so much on centres, and the first thing they're doing is taking away one of the primary functions of people, which is their ability to see. And I think, that really isn't a level playing field, and it causes a ton of problems. It's AHT creep, it's diminishing FCR with high email deflections, it's poor sales results. The list is long, but the upside and the possibilities and the opportunity is massive.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that, that seems fairly obvious. If I've got something like a broken router, a broken laptop, a smart device, and I can't figure out how to do something, or a broken washing machine that's not doing what I'm expecting, to be able to call and then literally just show the agent the problem using the camera on my phone. I mean, that seems like a clear advantage. I mean, it seems like, like you're saying about trying to fix problems with your eyes shut, and it's so much easier when you can see the problem. But can you use this for other applications? Because when we were talking about this before, I was thinking about things like fraud, being able to see a customer and see what the customer is seeing, or maybe witness a digital signature. There must be security applications as well.
Yeah, great point. There's a lot of different securities. I think when we talk about things like witnessing things, fraud, a lot of the times we're thinking about financial, but it can be anything. For signatures, for instance, digital signatures, it's a great one. There's a ton of ways of collecting digital signatures, but no one's really got any idea of whose signature they are. They're just a signature received over an email that someone sent out a while ago. If it's important and if you really care about that, then some sort of visual verification of the person that's doing it at the time might seem like a good idea. So those sort of things we've brought into product development, and feel that whole ability to see who's doing that thing that you're asking them to do is a massive way of cutting down on fraud and appending images next to signatures, all sorts of things. So finance is one, obviously, massive connotations there, but it can be anything. It can be returns fraud, these little white lies. People trying to claim for damage when there isn't damage. But it's not little white lies. They're costing tens, hundreds of millions. And these are the sorts of things where, people are ringing up, oh, you've damaged my this when you delivered, or, this is faulty, I need my money back. And companies are just refunding. It's too expensive to bring the thing back and turn it. So that's turning almost into an industry. And what we're finding out there, it's fascinating. So one of the great things that we're doing, I mean, it happened with a major white goods supplier. One of the first things, the first calls they had, and we were all sort of listening with bated breath for this new thing to kick off, and the hundreds of agents to get going. And the very first call was, when your delivery guys were here, they damaged my floor, and we'd like X $100 and as compensation, we're going to be blah 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 escalation. And the agent was brilliant. She said, I'm so sorry to hear about that. Could you just turn on your, I'm just sending you a link. Just click on the link and I'll be able to see the damage. Suddenly, the phone hangs up. and that's the thing. And it's happening time and time again. Sometimes they show the damage and the damage wasn't caused by the time and it's obvious. And the customer says, oh, you're fair enough. Or the damage is not as major as people make out. But the point is, you're not just stopping the fraud itself, you're also stopping the calls, because as soon as people realize that you can see what they see, the calls stop. And we had this with a major visa application service that was operating throughout Africa, a government body, and they were getting a lot of visa application fraud. And so they were having to bring everyone to the centers to save time. As soon as they started putting on there that they were doing it all remotely, but doing it all visually, the incidence of fraud dropped massively, and the calls stopped coming in, and the site visits of the bots trying to steal the places just fell through the floor. And that whole thing, that was on, like I say, it was on across national TV across France. You know, it saved people hours of their time. It saved them standing in queues in the baking sun to do something that they could do from home so easily. And just, yeah, things like that are really fantastic for me. They're the things that make it all worthwhile, where you get that human win as well as the company win. Yeah, great for everyone.
It's interesting that you're saying that about the fraud, you know, like stopping the calls where people are saying something hasn't been delivered or stuff like that. You know, I think that often we don't even think about that as volume in the contact center. And yet, you know, I experienced this myself with Amazon. I ordered a load of books, and then I told them, you've told me it's been delivered, but it hasn't been delivered. And they just immediately sent it to me again. And then I found that it had been delivered. It was on my windowsill outside, you know, so they tried to deliver it when I wasn't in, put it somewhere that I didn't notice, but then they just resent the entire package all over again, without question. So it's easier for them just to repeat the order rather than, you know, doing any kind of investigation into whether that was real or not. I mean, in my case, I just gave the repeat order to a charity shop. So it was easier for me to give it away than to actually process the return.
Exactly. It's the same thing. And I think those, you know, whether it's great, can you turn the camera? Can you just show me outside? Or whether it's, you know, just show me the damage, or whatever it is, it's just about being able to see the same thing the customer can, level the playing field, you know, give the agent sight. You know, it's not rocket science. It's just about helping. And the more you can do that, the easier and better the resolutions, the easier and better the conversations. Actually, the closer people get, and the more empathy there is in the conversations. There's a lot of talk at the moment about, you know, emotional intelligence as opposed to just artificial intelligence. And I think the more you can make it like a face-to-face conversation, the more emotional intelligence is involved, and the closer the two people become. And that's really why we do this. It is contact. And the closer that contact, the better the outcomes, the more patience people have, the more engagement people have, the more ability to solve, the more propensity to buy. Whatever it is, it's better when we're closer.
Yeah. And I was going to ask you then about that point, because I was thinking the stuff that you're talking about, it sounds like video support or video agents would be a way to describe it. But that also just makes me think of a Zoom call or a Teams call, you know, and yet all of the functionality that you're talking about, this kind of visual support, is much more than just being able to see the agent, isn't it? It's like being able to see the problem with the agent alongside you, rather than just having a Zoom call together.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. It's a bit of a misnomer for what we do when you call it video. But you know, as I said, our background was all about visual, and visual means so many more things. Oftentimes, in fact, the majority of cases don't do a face-to-face call. You know, the vast majority. You know, when we started out, we thought everyone would want face-to-face. In reality, very few do. They're not set up for it. They don't feel it's what their agents are set up for. So, you know, most of the calls don't have the agent and customer seeing each other. Sometimes it's fantastic to do it for a white glove service, for a, you know, in branch where you want to get confidence and trust. You can bring it in, but there might be visual assistance. There might be, you know, times when we've got to fill forms in together. Nothing to do with video. Might need to capture signatures. We might need, you know, to upload images as proof for claims or documents. None of these are to do with the film side. It could be, you know, it could be anything to do with applications or navigating websites, or, you know, so many different things. But really, I think, you know, what we're trying to achieve out there is anywhere where, you know, if you were literally, we're back to standing in the same room. It's not necessarily about us looking at each other, it's about doing things together interactively with often something physical, but the common thing is we can see it. And what we're trying to do is bring that same experience to the remote agents. And I think the closer we can get to that, and it will just keep getting closer and closer and closer, our end objective is to serve better than if you were stood right next to each other. And you can do that so much more when you think about it, because all the while that we're talking, we're interacting, we're resolving, we're also collecting data. And you don't do that when you're face to face. And that really became stark to me on one of our implementations where we were helping with retail scenario. And it became obvious to me that, the retailers collect no data on what happens when people go to the store. But if we systemize it, if we put in structures, then there's lots of new data that comes into the fray. It's the same, whatever you and I have done remotely, helping you solve and troubleshoot in your app or on your website, tons of data comes out of that otherwise you don't get. And all of these things, and we'll, I'm sure, touch on the theme of where AI is taking us, but all of these things bring a new dimension to even those models.
Yeah, and AI is something that I wanted to ask you about, because if you go to any conference right now that's talking about CX, then everybody is just talking about AI. Peter Ryan, my co-host on this podcast, he just wrote an article recently saying, can we start talking more about CX solutions and how we improve CX, rather than the first conversation everybody has is, here's something I can do with AI for you. And, and one of the things I always talk to people about is my utilities in Brazil, my water company, my telco that I use here. They're all geared up for WhatsApp support. I've never once had to phone them ever, because the WhatsApp text support is so good and so comprehensive that it just works. And it must be a fraction of the cost of running a full contact center. But the kind of visual support you're talking about, I mean, that seems to fall into that as well. It's like it's a proven solution with use cases. And yet there's so many organizations out there that are not doing this, but they're trying to roll out AI chatbots.
Yeah, you are, again, you hit the nail on the head. The whole thing, I mean, AI, fundamentally, AI is obviously here to stay. It's bringing massive global benefits, and that's not going to change, and it will get better and better. So I get everyone needs to be on that bandwagon. But what they shouldn't do is ignore the things that can bring that instant value. I think, a lot of things with AI, and one of the articles I was reading recently, you're into 100K as table stakes. If you're not in at that level, you're not going to get anything meaningful, certainly at a second gen. And there's a lot of blood on the floor. So, it's kind of an invest and see. It's kind of spend it all up front, do all the work, and then let's see what it does to the process. And it takes time, right? And it's intrusive. So, there's big effort behind it. But on the other hand, you can do things like, as you said, your WhatsApp one, you've got with visualization. We recently worked with one of the major German car brands, manufacturers. And we got briefed finally. We knew it was coming. We finally got briefed on the Wednesday, and this was for an application of helping people who've acquired a car to access the media that was password protected or locked, and was full of other people's data and all of these sort of things. So the manufacturers have to identify the people before they can let them in, and all these sorts of things. Anyway, we were briefed on the Wednesday. We started from scratch, built the campaign in 11 languages, and we're live on Monday with thousands of caller weeks across 12 locations. Mm-hmm. And the client's quote was, "I have to say, I'm quite speechless," which is not bad. And I think the results are phenomenal, but the point is, one of my real pushes in life is to create immediate and enduring value. And I think, you should be able to see value in hours, into days, certainly weeks, and not months and months and months. And you've got to be expecting some real returns and payback rapidly. And I think that to me is table stakes, not the other way around. Not put a lot of money in and see what you get. It's more about, do an investment and see returns straight away. And I think, we've got to have a bit more of that mindset to balance the big spend that's going on where there's a lot of uncertainty around it.
Yeah, I was thinking of a parallel with an episode of this podcast we did a few weeks ago with the BPO VXI, and they were talking about how essentially talking about turning the customer engagement into a profit rather than it always being a cost to run the customer contact function of the business. And that's why they were kind of saying that you can use AI, you can try to automate as much as possible, but if you've got humans in the loop, then you're doing the relationship building, you're building the loyalty, you've got the opportunities to do cross-selling, upselling, all, just by having those conversations, you've got the chance to actually generate revenue. And it seems that if you plugged in the visual element there, then having that human in the loop with the visual element, it sort of turbocharges that process.
Yeah. It really does. And, one of the great talks I listened to was a prior CEO of one of the major banks. And they were saying, look, you can cut costs so far, but your ability to change your financial results through increasing your revenue is unlimited. And it's that blinkered approach on it's always about driving cost that takes us down a one-way street, and we forget why we're here. And another, more facts, just interesting small things. I mean, obviously, AI's critical and forms an ever-growing set of capabilities. But the role of the humans is just getting more and more complex all the time. It's just getting harder and harder. And we're expecting, peak performance when there's no respite, there's no easy calls, because you're just getting all the hard calls, right? So we expect that peak performance, but you're going to get a lot more burnout and dissatisfaction unless we change it a little bit and arm people properly, give them new capabilities. And like you say, if we're expecting these superheroes as they're becoming to spot patterns, to upsell, cross-sell, to solve the most complex capabilities, we can't do it without giving them some more armory, some more ability. And if we do, then, we're heading down a difficult road. And I think partly it's about that. It's this cost, but it's also common sense. I think with all these things, whatever conversations that we're having, they cost money. And you've got to look, the bottom line is the cost. And I don't know whether you've done it, and you'd be odd if you have, because I fall into that odd category. But do you know what the cost of a word is?
No.
Any idea? Have you ever thought about it?
Like a word being exchanged between an agent and a customer?
Yeah.
No.
It's 0.0036 cents.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a word cost. So it costs 51 cents a minute for the average outsourced conversation. And when you work through this and you really understand the amount of wasted words, it's incredible. Reading terms and conditions. What's that about? That's my favorite one. I'm reading you terms and conditions. You don't want to listen to them. I don't want to read them. We're just ticking a compliance box. But it costs me 5,000 more or less per annum, per agent, to do that. If I've got an inbound with 15, 20 calls a day, I'm doing it 3-4 minutes a time. It's unbelievable. We're just throwing money. Troubleshooting. All those blind conversations. How many words are wasted? Can you just describe what you're seeing? I've got a blinking light. What colour's your blinking light? Listen, is it amber or is it red? Well, it's more amber than red. All this, it's costing it. Every word is costing it. That's the bit that burns me. when I see waste, I see a dripping tap or something, I'm going, okay, but how much is that going to cost? How long is that going to go on for? And we're not talking about an odd little bit here or there. We're talking every conversation. Every time I'm describing something that if you saw it, you'd get it in a millisecond. It's wasted words. And this whole thing is about efficiencies, but better experience. And a chat's great, but very rarely, except in cases like Zappo and all these sort of places, but very rarely do you employ a call center agent to just have nice chats with people and make things just to have a lovely time. Normally it's about making a sale, solving a problem, doing it efficiently, doing it to a timescale, stopping a second call, all these things. And yet we say to people, don't use your eyes, talk it through without any consequence of the cost of a word.
Yeah, I think that what you're doing is switching the focus, because normally we talk about, wouldn't it be great for the customer if this experience was more visual? And what you're saying is actually, no, here you can give the agent, like you can add to their armory, you can give them a tool that helps them to not only do a better job, but just make them feel better, like feel more supported, feel that they can actually do their job better.
Oh, plus there's a light shining on the agents. Don't forget, when you're used to AI as a customer and you're used to efficiency and no waste, and then you get a human who's not up to their game, you judge them harshly, and that leads to frustrations and bad conversations. But when the human is adding greater value than the AI, such as a visual interaction, then suddenly you're engaged again. And the whole part about life is that engagement and that good relationship that gets you so much further than if you're starting off on a fractious relationship and disengagement. So I think, it's got a massive part to play. And it's just about now, just getting everyone on board with, the power of what's out there, as well as AI. It's the whole visual interaction, the VI, and what that can do for us.
Okay, great. Well, look, why don't we wrap up then and just look at what you've got coming up? I mean, is there anything exciting? We're already halfway through the year, unbelievably.
Right.
What's coming up in the rest of 2025 for Grypp then?
Frightening how fast time is flying. Listen, we've got amazing things coming up. I always look at it first in terms of product. We've got phenomenal new releases out. Some crazy stuff we're doing in retail and the physical presence that's really going to change the game and just change how we serve and sell more in those environments and how we do it efficiently. One client that we're talking with, a big US retailer, they have a massive issue just with seasonal staff, recruiting tens of thousands of people. We've got a technology that can implement and cut that by maybe up to 60%, but make it a far better, more controlled environment. So those things are super exciting. We're doing lots with apps and how we help companies service within that, and fundamentally constantly looking at the newest avenues for AI use that are really going to benefit from day one. So again, the way that we're implementing the AI is to create immediate and enduring value without that big upfront investment and that fingers crossed approach to it. So and just doing it in a way that's very open and non-threatening. So these are all things coming up. On top of that, traveling around the world, getting lots of new great faces involved, seeing and meeting incredible people and great partners, and working with them to really help put a shine on their world and see what we can do to sort of unite through sight and bring everyone together and make this industry another fundamental step forward in capabilities and service and the whole culture. So yeah, it's going to be a busy rest of year and a massive 26, but we're super stoked by that.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. We really appreciate your feedback and suggestions. You can reach myself, Mark Hillary, or Peter Ryan via LinkedIn. Please also leave a rating or review on your favourite podcast provider, as that helps more people to find us. As always, we'd like to thank Chris Haig at Traction Media for the CX Files graphics. See you next week.